And the more and more we read and the more we, the more we hear the stories, we will actually develop a fondness for Krishna. And just like when you get to know someone more and more, we'll start being able to guess, oh, I think Krishna is thinking like this. I think he's going to do this. And oh, Krishna would do this in this situation. And that's one of the goals of listening to Krishna's stories, that we will know. It's so amazing that we know God. Who can claim to know God? But in a sense, we can, in a small way. So let us once again dive with all our hearts and minds absorbed in Krishna's stories. And to bring us to this present moment for the next 30 minutes, completely opening our hearts to Krishna's stories, let us chant the Hare Krishna mantra together once. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So finally in Mathura, there was peace. And there was not just peace, there was joy, happiness, excitement, bliss. Life was bustling everywhere, and Krishna was the center of everyone's affection and attention and attraction and everything. And so the residents of Mathura, the Mathura Vasis, they were so blissful all the time. And everything was set right. Whatever had been done or undone by Kamsa was now set right by Krishna. Ugrasen was back on the throne. His parents were pleased and happy. Everyone in the city and all the neighboring kingdoms had made peace, the allies, and everything was perfect. And Krishna had just finished his schooling, his Gurukul. He had done a great service to his Guru by reviving or bringing back from the dead his dead son, his Guru's dead son, his teacher's son. And so now Krishna was back in Mathura. And sometime later, Krishna's very, very dear cousin, brother, and friend, perhaps we could give him one of the few people in Krishna's life would perhaps be appropriate to be given this title of being Krishna's best friend. And Uddhav definitely belonged to that category. Uddhav was so close and dear to Krishna, he in fact looked almost identical to Krishna, including his darkish complexion, the way he dressed, the way he talked, and he too being a prince, he being extremely intelligent and learned, him being a master in politics and warfare and military, and also being as much educated as Krishna himself. And above everything else, he was a very, very dear devotee of Krishna. And being so learned and knowledgeable, he knew exactly who Krishna is. He knew this is the source of everything. This Krishna, who is walking amongst us like an ordinary human being and is also participating every day in the court when we meet and discuss the politics of our kingdom and what should be done and not be done, and he gives opinions and takes advice and gives suggestions, and all this is just such an engaging performance. But actually, he is the knower of everything. He is the Paramatma, the super soul in everyone's heart. And so Uddhav was very clear about this. And yet Uddhav was also flooded with love and friendship towards Krishna all the time. They did practically, when Krishna was in Mathura, the most time he spent was with Uddhav, really discussing his intimate heart of what advice he really sought personally. When Krishna wanted advice, he would ask Uddhav. When he would consult someone before doing something, Uddhav was never missed out from whom he would consult. If he wanted to run a really important errand or a task which he himself could not do, Uddhav was someone he would delegate it to. So one day, Uddhav and Krishna were sitting, as you see in this beautiful painting, and discussing everything and laughing and joking and everything. And Uddhav noticed there is a certain unaccomplished mission or something unaccomplished in Krishna's heart. And he inquired from Krishna, what is it that is left to be done? And Krishna was so happy that Uddhav would always know his heart and mind. And Krishna said, my dear Uddhav, it's been such a long time since I came here from Vrindavan, and I left all those most loving souls who completely gave their hearts and minds and life to me. And I just came away. Of course, I have so much important things to do, and Devaki and Vasudeva and our parents and all that, yes. But I feel I must reciprocate. I must do something for them. In fact, I promised them I would go back almost immediately. To some of them, I said I would return in 2 days. To some of them, I said once Ugrasen is back on the throne. To some of them, I said, let me just spend a little while with my parents and I'll come back. But I don't really know when I would go back. And while saying this, Krishna suddenly said, my dear Uddhav, if there's one person whom I could trust to take a message from me to my dearmost family and friends and everyone there in Vrindavan, it would be you. Could you please go? You see, Krishna didn't want to just send a letter. He wanted to send someone who could almost carry Krishna in his heart. And being with that messenger, Krishna wanted to kind of really be with the residents of Vrindavan. So he had to really choose someone who could do that role. It was not just carrying a written letter. And at the same time, he wanted that letter to be carried by someone who really understood what this letter really meant, much more than the words in that letter. He wanted someone who could really go and really give the love which Krishna was always sending towards the residents of Vrindavan. And Uddhav was the perfect person for that role. And there was one last reason why Krishna chose Uddhav. It was because Uddhav was so learned and knowledgeable and even spiritually very highly realized. But still he wanted his dear friend Uddhav to see what true, unconditional, absolute pure love really meant. And he wanted Uddhav to experience the love of the residents of Vrindavan. And so he requested Uddhav, and Uddhav said, of course, I would be more than happy to go and meet your parents, to meet the cowherd boys, to meet the cowherd girls, to see Govardhan and Yamuna and all these most intimate places which I've heard so much about. And I think there I will really meet you, Krishna. Although you sit here in front of me, I don't really know you. But those residents of Vrindavan, they know you. They love you from their hearts, and they have been given such an intimate love from you, which perhaps me and none of the people in Mathura here have experienced. So Krishna smiled, and Uddhav very eagerly set off towards Vrindavan. And when Uddhav left for Vrindavan, he rode on a beautiful royal chariot. And as he approached Vrindavan, it was that time of the day, it was towards the end of the day, when all the cowherd boys and the calves and all of them were returning back. And on his way, when he entered towards the forests of Vrindavan, just the natural beauty of Vrindavan completely captivated his heart. And again, remember, it was Krishna selected him not just because he was a messenger, because he knew, and Uddhav wanted to experience this love of Vrindavan. And with those eyes, when he now beheld the beauty of the forest of Vrindavan, it was something he had never seen or experienced before. And as he entered, already there were tears rolling down his eyes as he saw the Govardhan hill. He saw the beautiful pastures. He saw Yamuna with a beautiful river, and he knew all these places because he had heard so much about all that Krishna did in all these places. But for the first time, he actually saw them. And because he was seeing them with the eyes of love and with the eyes of knowledge, he experienced everything which happened there. And so it was just overwhelming of spiritual emotion. And as he approached nearer and nearer, and all these places of Vrindavan just completely entered his heart. And he began to wonder, what did I do in my life as a prince? Now we must remember that Uddhav was one of the highest princes in the entire Yadu and the Vrishni and Bhoja and Andhaka dynasties. So it's a very, very, very high up royalty. He perhaps had never even been to a village in his life. He had never experienced going alone somewhere. It was impossible. He was only surrounded by guards and other many levels of ministers. And he only went everywhere he went. There was a huge entourage of an escort of people taking him, and so much, so much. For the first time, he actually went in a very simple way and really wanted to experience it. So it even more entered his heart, and he was really wondering, what did I do my entire life that I did not experience Vrindavan? And he even began to wonder, was will I, if I as I'm entering, these spiritual emotions are overwhelming me, will I ever be able to leave this place? And I wonder why Krishna left this place. And as he went ahead, he witnessed that beautiful scene of Vrindavan in its most, at that time when everyone in Vrindavan was out. It was during the evenings when Krishna would come back with the cows, and all the cowherd men would come out to greet their sons, and all the ladies would come out to feed and refresh their children and look at Krishna and talk about Krishna, and the entire Vrindavan village was out. And that's what Uddhav experienced. And he just remained there at a distance, just seeing all these people. And in his eyes, these people, to him, who was always only hobnobbing with the kings and the princesses and the queens of this earth, all powerful people. But right now for Uddhav, for the first time, he felt a little out of place. He felt that these exalted souls who gave their hearts and lives to Krishna, how he was feeling awkward. How do I enter into this realm of pure love? And after some time, when things started to settle down a little bit, and that time Uddhav went nearer, and he went to the home of Nanda and Yashoda. And Nanda and Yashoda, the parents of Krishna, when they saw Uddhav, they knew, because Nanda Baba had kind of been acquainted with Uddhav during his visits to Mathura and everything, Yashoda Maiya too. So they recognized him, and they were so happy to see him, and they welcomed him, and they brought him home. And there's a big description of how they were so hospitable, with so much love and affection. They welcomed Uddhav. And you see, when someone who's very close to someone whom we love or are very attached to, we kind of really feel the presence of the person whom we are missing in the person who has come to us, because there is a deep connection between them. And that's exactly what they felt towards Uddhav. Although they themselves were not so close to him and intimate with him, but because he was so dear to Krishna and they knew it, they could completely give their hearts and love and open their hearts and minds to Uddhav. And he came and they invited him home. And it was, although this painting is a very beautiful painting, but Uddhav could feel the pain in their hearts. But this pain which they were experiencing was actually very special. Although the word we use for what they were experiencing in separation from Krishna is pain, but it was because it was spiritual emotion, that pain of separation actually brought them the greatest joy. Because now the only thing they thought of, the only person they thought of, the only person they spoke about, the only person they saw everywhere was Krishna. And so Uddhav came inside, and they began to really tell him all about, they just couldn't stop speaking about Vrindavan, about Krishna and what he did and how he did. But please note that only Nanda Baba did all the talking. Since the moment Uddhav entered, Yashoda could not speak because she was so overcome by her strong feelings towards Krishna, she just could not speak. She simply sat there and tears rolled down her eyes. She could bring the food and give it, but she could not speak a single word. And Nanda Baba somehow had the strength to speak and inquire and ask about Uddhav. And after they had really pleased him with all kinds of wonderful things to eat and settled him and refreshed him and given him a nice place, and the whole night they spent together talking about Krishna. And then after speaking so much non-stop, and Uddhav really didn't want them to stop. And he just was absorbing everything and just asking more and more, really, how did Krishna kill Putana? And then the whole 1 hour. And then, and what happened after that? After that, there was this Trinavarta, the whirlwind demon. And after that, Shankachud. And after that, we didn't tell you about the snake. We didn't tell you about how Krishna would steal butter and it just went on and on and on. And it was almost the morning when Nanda Baba realized that, my guest is here. I have to ask about him too. And then there was some inquiries about Uddhav. And then again, the topic shifted and Nanda Baba then started speaking. And he said, my dear Uddhav, can I really ask you what's on my mind? Uddhav said, yes. And Nanda Baba said, does Krishna even remember us? Does he? I know he doesn't need us anymore. He is such a charming and attractive person. And now he's with his real parents. We were just his foster parents. But does he even talk about us? Does he even remember us? Or I know we didn't do much for him, and he went into this real feeling of, does Krishna remember us? And Uddhav was just so, throughout this, Uddhav was not just experiencing hearing the stories of Krishna from Nanda Baba and Yashoda, but he was actually experiencing the love that they felt for Krishna. And this was starting to actually open his true eyes of spiritual knowledge. All the wisdom and knowledge that he had about everything. And he was also an accomplished yogi, in the sense he was a deep realized spiritualist from his own power of meditation and concentration and mystical depth. But still he had never experienced such pure love, which is not accessible by any endeavor of knowledge and learning and meditation and study and all that. And so he was so happy. And he said, my dear Nanda Baba and Yashoda, please know, with all my heart and with all honesty, I say this, there is not one moment in Krishna's life when he does not think of you and talk about you and want to be with you. And what can I say? Because you all have occupied his heart so much, he can't even have any intimate connection with anybody anywhere else. We all know that this is not Krishna. Krishna is still in Vrindavan. We just have Krishna who's on a mission to do things here, but his heart is only with you. And so hearing this, Nanda Baba and Yashoda were happy and satisfied. But somehow, because of their intense love, they didn't believe it. They thought, okay, Uddhav is trying to make us happy, but I think Krishna doesn't remember us. Otherwise, he would have come back. Logical, makes sense. And so that morning, finally, none of them had slept, but they were energized talking about Krishna. And the next morning, Nanda Baba said, please, you can proceed and do your morning duties and rituals, because Uddhav was a very qualified and a spiritual person. So he had so many rituals and important things he would do. He was a very disciplined person. So Uddhav went to the Yamuna and did all that he had to do. And that morning, when everyone came out, now for the first time, everyone else saw Uddhav's chariot. And now some whispers spread around. Has Akrura come back? And for some people, it was, has Akrura come back with Krishna? But for most, it was, has that evil Akrura come back, who took Krishna away from us? And now that he's satisfied his dead master Kamsa, what has he come back? to offer our flesh in oblation to please that dead soul? Of course, they didn't speak this with anger personally towards Akrura, but it was just that emotion of being separated from Krishna, which was bringing out this loving anger from their hearts. And after some time, when the right word spread out that, oh, Uddhav, a very dear friend of Krishna, is here, everyone was very, suddenly it was like, oh really, so someone who has been with Krishna, like he's with Krishna right now, so he must be knowing. And suddenly there was this state of inquisitiveness, and tell us, what does Krishna do, does he remember all this? And so as Uddhav came out of the river, all the gopis especially, they surrounded him, because he was just with the parents and he will be with the cowherd boys anytime, so but we need our time too, so they completely surrounded him. And when they saw Uddhav, actually, they were very pleased in their hearts, and they immediately knew, just by seeing him, that this is someone who's very close to Krishna, very dear to Krishna, and actually he loves Krishna very much too. And immediately there was a lot of trust in their hearts that maybe we can really speak to him from our hearts. And so they requested Uddhav, please come with us. Please spend some time with us. Tell us about Krishna. Tell us how he is. And so they went into some secluded part of the village, and together they all sat. And Uddhav, who looked exactly like Krishna, reminded them so much of Krishna. And he began to speak and inquire about them. And then they spoke. And when they spoke, what Uddhav had experienced last night with Nanda and Yashoda, that spiritual experience and emotion, this was times 10, 100,000. Because now the gopis' love for Krishna overflooded completely, and they could not stop talking about Krishna and what he did and how he is, and the whole day just went like that. And towards the evening, they too inquired from Uddhav, does Krishna really remember us? What we are just simple village girls, and we just try to our best to serve him, but maybe he doesn't remember us. And then Uddhav said, of course he does, and there is a message I have from him. And then Uddhav opened the letter, and as he opened the letter and began to read, the most special of all the gopis, Radharani, at that time, she went into such a spiritual state of remembrance that she started talking to a little black bee, a big bumblebee. And she was talking to him as though that was Uddhav. And Uddhav was listening to what she was saying. And then later she came and joined them back. And then Uddhav gave Krishna's message that, my dear gopis, he read, my dear gopis, please know that you all are always in my hearts, and there is nothing I can do to ever repay your love. Please just be satisfied by knowing that your love is the reward for your love, and that's all. And then Krishna said, I actually went away to increase your love for me, because when we miss someone, we think of that person more and we remember that person more. And so therefore, by doing so, you will always be with me. And Krishna also gave a little philosophy. He said that I am everywhere, and just like the elements cannot be separated from everything, similarly I can't be separated from anything, and I'm always there, I'm always in your hearts. And so the gopis were a little pacified. And in this way, they were kind of satisfied with this conversation. And again, the next day, they met Uddhav. And Uddhav, who was actually supposed to come back in a couple days or few days, he stayed there for several months. That prince, who was only used to royal luxuries and all kinds of power, and he was on missions and all that was pale in comparison to the simple love and life of Vrindavan. And he just stayed and stayed and stayed and stretched it as much as he could before he really felt that, I just for duty's sake, I need to go back. And so everyone was so happy to be with Uddhav. And on the last day when he was leaving, they gave him such a nice farewell. And he actually spoke to the gopis very intimately, and he said, "My dear gopis, I don't know what I can say to you, but I can just say one thing. I wish that I take birth as grass, and on that grass, when you will, when you will walk over that grass, which will be me, I think then I will be completely purified and I'll be most happy in that position because your love for Krishna is beyond all my Vedic study and my knowledge and my position. And although I sit next to Krishna every single day and I'm with him at every meal, by his side on every mission, everything we do, yet I'm so far away. But although you are so far away, you are in Krishna's heart and Krishna is in your heart every single moment. And therefore, I wish I'm only able to serve all of you. And then, very tearfully, Uddhav left, and all the Vrindavan Vasis, residents, returned to their work. And when Uddhav came back to Krishna and Vrindavan, he was so happy to convey all this message to Krishna. And Krishna was so satisfied to hear everything. And it took several days for Uddhav to tell everything in detail to Krishna. Wanted to know, how is this? How is that? How are the cows? How are the gopis? How are my parents? How are the cowherd boys? How is Yamuna? How is Govardhan? How is this? And Uddhav was more than happy to describe everything. And Uddhav felt that he had just, he felt he had come back from the spiritual world. How interesting that he was next to Krishna all the time, but now he felt he has returned from the spiritual world because he had that deep experience of love. And then, after this, several months later, Krishna said one day, Uddhav, do you remember I had met the first day when I came here, I had met this hunchback lady, Kubja, and then I had straightened her back and I had given her so much beauty. She had requested, she really wanted to serve me, to thank me, to express her love and devotion. And I haven't forgotten. I think, would you mind coming with me? Let's just go and let's be with her and spend some time with her. And so Uddhav was, of course, he said, of course, I'll be more than happy. And so they went to Kubja's home, Trivakra's home, and they were so happy. They met her and Krishna, and she completely served Krishna with all her heart. And she said, please just stay here all the time. I'll serve you both day and night. Please just stay here. And Krishna said, no, we have to leave. And then they left. And then Krishna said, a few days later, he was sitting with Balaram and he was sitting with Uddhav again. And he said, oh, we also have to go to one very special person whom I promised. And that was Uncle Akrura. So Krishna and Balaram and Uddhav went to Uncle Akrura. And Akrura was so happy. He hosted them and he welcomed them and they had a wonderful time together. And then Krishna had one very important political and loving request from Akrura. He was going to send him on a very important mission, which kind of marks the beginning of the next phase of Krishna's life. And we will see what that important mission was next time. Thank you very much. May these pastimes and stories of Krishna always fill our heart and bring us closer to Krishna and give us a deep spiritual experience. And this spiritual experience of just hearing the pastimes of Krishna actually completely satisfies the soul. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night and day, and we will meet on Wednesday again. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.